Hey, how's it going everyone? Welcome back to It's Poppin', where we talk about everything pop-up camper related. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to safely hook up your pop-up camper electricity or electrical system when you're at home. Alright, so it should be pretty simple, right? You just take your 30 amp plug right here that comes out of your pop-up camper and you just plug it right into your wall, right? Alright, so unfortunately that's not going to work, but there's actually a really simple tool that you can get to make your 30 amp plug compatible with your house, 15 or 20 amp electrical outlets. Alright, so all you effectively need is one of these 30 amp, and this is going to be a female, to 15 amp male adapters. And I think a lot of times these are called like a dog bone adapter or something similar to that. And essentially what you do is you take your 30 amp female, plug in your 30 amp male coming out of your pop-up camper, and then that allows you to plug in your 15 amp connector straight into your wall outlet. Alright, so this setup is, all fine and dandy for running electricity into your pop-up while you're at home. However, there are some intricacies that definitely need to be discussed when you're trying to run some of the electronics or, things that draw electricity in your pop-up camper. Namely, that's going to be if you're trying to run your rooftop air conditioner on your pop-up camper. So our rooftop air conditioner is a Coleman, and this is a 13,500 BTU air conditioner that draws at peak wattage up to 1900 watts and over 15 amps. I think it's somewhere in the range of 15.3 amps or so. So with that being said, if you're drawing over 15 amps with just your air conditioner alone, that might present some problems if you're trying to plug into only a 15 amp outlet. So that's why it's generally recommended that if you're going to be running an air conditioner, at least one this size or bigger, you're going to want to be very careful when you're running into electrical components like that dog bone, where the plug is only rated at 15 amps, or if you're plugging it into a 15 amp outlet. If you already have a 30 amp outlet installed at home, well, obviously then you're good to go and probably don't even need to watch this video. But let's say on the other hand, you don't need to run an air conditioner, then you really shouldn't be too concerned about having, a 20 amp outlet and running the 30 amp extension cords and stuff like that. So if you're not planning on running an air conditioner, what you can do, in my opinion, and probably safely get away with, is you can absolutely plug into a 15 amp wall outlet, and if need be, you could probably also get away with a 15 amp extension cord, but you want to make sure you're keeping that extension cord as short as possible. Alright, so here's what we do to safely run our rooftop air conditioner, or at least test it out when we've been working on it, taking it apart or doing something where you want to make sure it runs again before you go out camping. So what we do is we make sure we plug our pop-up camper into a dedicated 20 amp outlet. And the way you can do that is go down in your basement or wherever your circuit breaker panel is located, and locate the outlets for whatever, or locate the breaker for whatever outlet you plan on plugging your pop-up camper into. And in our case, all of our garage outlets are 20 amps. So that's great in terms of when we're plugging in a high demand item like the air conditioner. Now the second thing you can do is limit the length of electrical cordage or extension cordage you're going to be utilizing when you plug in your pop-up camper at home. So what that means is if you can plug in your built-in 30 amp plug-in directly into that adapter and then right into an outlet, that's perfect, because the less length you have, of course, the less voltage drop you'll have and the better off you'll be. Now, if for whatever reason the area that you park your pop-up camper in doesn't allow for the built-in plug-in to reach to your outlet, I highly recommend picking up something like this, which is a 30 amp extension cord specifically built for RV or camper use. Now, this is a 10 gauge extension cord essentially, and what that of course allows it to do is carry a lot more current through it. Now, this is a extension cord that just continues on the 30 amp plug-in, so it's got a 30 amp male and a 30 amp female cord to it, but then of course you can just plug this directly into that 30 amp to 15 amp dog bone adapter. Going along with the extension cord topic, could you use a 12 gauge or maybe even a 14 gauge extension cord? And I think the answer is probably yes. What you'll want to do is make sure, once again, you limit the length of those cords. So 25 feet would be best. And then once you start getting into the 50 foot and 100 foot lengths, you're going to start having extension cords that can't handle the same amperage as a shorter cord could. So for example, a 12 gauge 25 foot length extension cord can still handle 15 amps, whereas if you start getting out into longer lengths or smaller in diameter extension cords, you're going to not be able to handle as high of wattages or amperages. So going back to my second point of utilizing a 10 gauge or 30 amp extension cord, I would really recommend using one of those if you're planning on or trying to run an air conditioner. Which brings me to my third point. So once again, if you're going to be trying to utilize your air conditioner at home plugged into your wall outlet, you want to first make sure you're running it on a dedicated 20 amp outlet with nothing else plugged into it. If you need an extension cord, you're using a purpose-built 30 amp or 10 gauge extension cord, but once again limiting the length of extension cord you need. And third would to be try and run it on the lowest setting possible. So what I did was a little bit of testing with a I think it's a kilowatt, and it measures wattage and amperage and voltage running through your wall outlet. And what I determined was that if I run our particular pop-up camper air conditioner unit on low cool with the cool turned all the way up, if you will, I can run the air conditioner just under 15 amps. And that includes everything that else that's running in the pop-up. So with all of that being said, I have in the past run our air conditioner at Highcool, which pumps the fan a little bit higher and draws a little bit more amperage and wattage, and I fortunately have been just fine. I know that pulls over 15 amps, like I said, maybe up to 15.3, and I kind of explained our whole system here. So I have run that for extended periods of time, kind of naively before I've done a lot of the research, but it hasn't tripped any breakers in the camper. It hasn't tripped on any of the breakers in the house, and none of the components in my system, and namely the 15 amp plug in the dog bone adapter, hasn't gotten hot or hasn't melted on me. Now, the only other thing that I could recommend doing is picking up one of those voltage meters or wattage meters, amperage meters. The particular one we have is called a kilowatt, and you can cycle through each of those and monitor exactly how much, like I said, voltage, wattage, or amperage your particular electrical setup is using. And in particular, what can be very helpful is monitoring the voltage. So what I've read is that somewhere in between the 106 to 110 volt range is definitely a danger zone in terms of the potential damage it might cause to whatever you're running. in that electrical system. So if you have a voltmeter plugged in, you can watch your voltage essentially drop in real time. And for example, ours goes from about 123.8 down to 120.8 when I was running the air conditioner at Highcool, full blast, everything on pretty much. So it was maintaining a safe voltage, at least for the duration that I was monitoring it. And that might be something you might want to do yourself. Not to mention the fact that you can test out some of the various electrical loads for your particular pop-up to see what you could probably safely be running on your particular home outlet. So with all that being said, I think the rule of thumb is, unless you have a 20 amp outlet or a 30 amp outlet for that matter, you really shouldn't run an air conditioner, at least of this size like we have, when you're plugged into your house. It's really not hard to get electricity run to your pop-up camper when you're at home. All you need is one of those 30 amp to 15 amp adapters. But where the intricacies lie is, what are you trying to run electricity-wise in your pop-up while you're at home? And if it's an air conditioner, of course, you just need to be mindful of your extension cords and how many amps your wall outlet is. So that's it for this video. Let me know if you have any questions, and hopefully we see you in the next video. If not, hopefully we see you out there camping.